Neymar underwent some physical exams this weekend to check the progress of his injury sustained last year and received simply the worst possible news from the doctors and then another terrible piece of news from his coach Jorge Jesus. Stay with us until the end, and we'll show you all the details of what these exams revealed about the current state of the Brazilian star, the controversial decision from Jorge Jesus regarding him, and I want to know your opinion about his future with the national team. Well, folks, roaming social media, the most common thing we see when news about Neymar appears are people saying things like, "Is this guy still a football player?" Or, "I thought he had already retired. I haven't seen him on the field in ages, he only appears in external controversies." And, well, the truth is that the time without playing is indeed long. The star hasn't been on the field since October 17, 2023, when he suffered a serious injury in a match between Brazil and Uruguay. So, in about 40 days, it will be a year since Neymar last played an official football match. For those who don't quite understand his injury, it is literally one of the worst injuries a player can suffer. He tore the anterior cruciate ligament in his knee and also the meniscus. The main issue with this injury is the postoperative phase. It's a very painful process that requires a lot of physiotherapy and, therefore, takes so much time to recover. Regarding his return, unfortunately, many players who have suffered from the same problem never return to being the same on the field, losing explosiveness and the ability to dribble at high speeds. Some also say that the body stops keeping up with the fast thinking, and there's also the fear of getting injured again. It's sad to think about it, as at 32 years old, we knew that Neymar would no longer be that unstoppable Neymar from Santos and Barcelona who darted and dribbled at high speed, but we could still see a glimpse of that, and now it probably won't be possible anymore. When he suffered this injury, the main concern was the Copa America. After all, the tournament was starting in June. From the day of his injury until the Copa America was about 8 months. Most players who suffer from this injury usually return to the field in 6 to 10 months, so his participation was uncertain. But the doctors still said it would be possible, depending on how he progressed. Then, as the tournament drew closer, Rodrigo Losmar, the Brazilian national team and Neymar's doctor, made it clear that there wouldn't be enough time to compete. Doing so would mean excessively forcing things, skipping recovery stages, and thus risking the rest of his career. According to him, expectations were that between mid and late September, the star would finally return to the field, giving about 11 months since the injury. He was already showing up, training with the ball, but individually and not with the team. Unfortunately, this weekend, the terrible news for Neymar came, starting badly and ending even worse. According to the main sports newspaper in Saudi Arabia, Neymar will need an additional 2 months of treatment for his left knee ligament injury. And to make matters worse, since the number 10 is only expected to return to the field in November, coach Jorge Jesus is considering registering the Brazilian in the Saudi League only in January. The squad registration deadline for the first half of the season ended last Monday. Since the tournament only allows 9 foreigners over 21 years old, Al Ittihad needed to leave one off the list. Thus, Jesus is considering not registering the forward to use him only in the Asian Champions League until January. In other words, he only has one more foreigner spot available in the Saudi League and needs to resolve this by Wednesday at the latest. The spot would naturally be Neymar's, but since it's been reported that he will only return in 2 months and not in September as they thought, he's considering registering Renan Lodi, leading us to believe that, in his view, it's better to have a foreigner who can play from now on, like Lodi, rather than Neymar, who would only be available at the end of November. Thus, from November, he will play a few games in the Asian Champions League, but won't participate in the Saudi League matches, which are much more frequent than the Asian Champions League. In other words, it seems highly likely that we won't see Neymar playing regularly again until 2025, which would total an incredible 15 months without playing regularly, only returning to the field at the end of November. He will also miss the October World Cup qualifiers against Chile and Peru and probably the November qualifiers against Venezuela and Uruguay. Another amusing factor is that his contract with the Saudis runs until June 2025, and to date, he has only played 5 matches for the club. Undoubtedly, they are very frustrated, as the Brazilian signed a 2-year contract, and if he returns in January, besides the 5 matches he has already played, he will only play for 5 months until the end of the contract. Remembering that he will receive an incredible 2 billion reais throughout this contract, meaning they paid 2 billion for him to possibly play for about 5 months, almost 1/5 of what was expected. Of course, this money won't be missed by those who have oil, but I'm sure they're not happy. It's extremely worrying to think that we might be witnessing the last years of the career of one of the best players we've ever seen. Before this knee injury, Neymar had already suffered another serious ankle injury in February 2023, which kept him out until September. That alone was about 7 months out. Then he returned, played about 7 or 8 matches, combining club and national team, and is now without playing a single official game in 2024. Thus, adding up the entire years of 2023 and 2024, the star might end up with less than 15 games. And given the poor football recently displayed by the Brazilian national team, I showed on the channel several great football names, such as Luis Suarez, Romario, Ronaldinho, and other stars, asserting loudly that if Brazil wants to have any chance of winning the 2026 World Cup, they have to play for Neymar just like Argentina did with Messi in 2022. Even Neto, who always criticized him, acknowledged recently that he was wrong and that without him, we go nowhere. I've said for a long time that he needed to play. It's not possible, man, it's not possible. Sorry, but I was wrong. Without Neymar we don't qualify, without Neymar we don't advance. There's no need to do this, folks. However, the fact is that seeing this number of games he has managed in recent years, unfortunately, the reality is that we must remember the first words of Dorival when he took over the Brazilian national team. Well, Brazil has to learn to play without Neymar. Although Neymar is undoubtedly still our best and most brilliant player, we can't focus on depending on him, as there is no guarantee that he will be healthy for any high-level competition. Imagine if he returns and then the Brazilian national team starts working a playing style entirely around him, and just before a World Cup, he gets injured again. Will the team be able to manage using a last-minute improvised strategy? There you go. And remember that I'm not in any way criticizing Neymar or questioning his football. But we have to acknowledge that his physical condition hasn't been consistent. It's not new that he hasn't been able to maintain a good sequence of games. Even before these 2 serious injuries, he already had an average of 30 games per year at PSG, which is almost half of what a top-level player does on average. Of course, if he manages to return now in November and play without injury until the end of the season, it will be the greatest possible reinforcement for this current team of Dorival. Then, in June, after this season and his contract with the Arabs ends, perhaps he might sign with a stronger league, a more competitive football, and help return to top form. And now I want to know from you who watched the video until here, what do you think? Do you agree with Dorival that learning to play without Neymar is a necessity, as we have no guarantee of his physical condition? Or do you think that in his absence, we won't get anywhere and, therefore, it's better to risk and build a team around him when he returns? Comment below your sincere opinion on all this controversy and why. And if you haven't seen what Rodrigo and Dorival Jr. themselves said about Neymar this Saturday, I'll leave that video appearing on the screen right now. God bless you and thanks.